Hey guys, this is Sharad with REsimpli, host of the REsimpli podcast. Super excited to have another fantastic guest on the show, Ariel Herrera. Ariel, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much, Rod. Super happy to be here.
Absolutely my pleasure. I know we had to reschedule this couple of times, but I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So, yeah, Ariel, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're joining in from, and what do you do in the real estate space? I know you have a very interesting background. So,
Yeah, so I'm currently based out in Tampa, Florida. I'm a data scientist, and I got into real estate about 5 years ago as I was working as a data scientist in New York City, spending about 4 hours a day commuting. I thought, oh my God, there has to be a better way of how I can get back to my family, spend more time, and possibly get into passive income and financial freedom. So with that, I kind of went through a rabbit hole of looking at many different potential solutions, like starting my own Amazon business, doing day trading. But ultimately, the one that really spoke to me was real estate. As I was reading through these books and resources, I learned that real estate had been around for hundreds, thousands of years. And many people have become successful out of real estate with even less resources than myself. So at that stage, I decided to look for my first investment. And I realized that the data was kind of all over the place. So I started my YouTube channel to kind of show my journey of how I was leveraging data to find my own deals.
incredible. So, just to be clear, you were a data scientist, not in real estate space, right?
Not in real estate and financial services.
Got it. And I'm curious, what book was it that kind of, gave you that aha moment? Oh, I could really get into real estate.
Yeah, it was just doing some of the research initially. I read a lot of Bigger Pockets books as well as other resources
Right,
and seeing how real estate had a lot of moving pieces. But if you had a system or a checklist of some sort, it was really just trying to follow everything from beginning to end, and you can become a successful real estate investor. So I think seeing that in a more logical sense helped me to kind of take away the emotion aspect, like, oh my God, real estate, becoming a landlord, that's a very scary thing. But thinking
right,
of it, oh, it could be just a very process type of engagement. That's what
right.
made me a little bit more enticed to go into it.
Can you speak a little bit more to that process? Like, what was it? You have data scientist. You're a data scientist, so you come from a very like data-driven point of view. And I look at business the same way, but I'm very curious about your process. So, what was it when you started? Like, walk me through like the process that you had in getting your first deal.
Great. So for my first deal, biggest question, where do I invest? So I was living in New Jersey, commuting into New York, and I wanted to be about an hour or so away from the city. So my commute wouldn't be as long, which then narrowed me down to maybe a 50-mile radius or so from New York City. But that's still pretty large. As you know, Sharad, in real estate, it's all about how hyper local you can get, even down to neighborhoods. So that's when I started to do research on what makes a good market. And since I had time on my side investing in my 20s, I wanted to look into something that was appreciating. So, an appreciating market, what makes markets appreciate? One of them being new developments. So, I started to do research using Google News and looking across different cities to see where are new developments happening when it comes to transportation, warehouses, so that I can potentially have a higher tenant pool as well as waterfront redevelopment areas. So, kind of taking all of that data and then kind of mapping that alongside like bus routes and train lines, I was able to see, okay, there's three main cities, Woodbridge, South Amboy, and Matawan, New Jersey, that meet my criteria of becoming these potentially up and coming areas while also being locally close to New York City. And ultimately, I chose South Amboy as it was an area that also had more residents than it did tenants, which could be a very favorable thing since those who own their own properties typically maintain the lawn a little bit more, have a little bit more pride in the neighborhood. So I ultimately invested there and overall used these series of data points to help me.
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard anyone do that level of, detailed research on it. So incredible. Is that still the market you're investing in? You live in Florida, so did something change? I mean, like what happened with the transition?
Yeah, coming into March 2020, I recognized that a lot of people were now forced to go into remote work. And
Yeah.
I originally was already working 3 days a week from home and then commuting into the city. I was able to make that arrangement. And I realized, oh my gosh, if everyone else can work remotely and realize how great of a thing this is, how much time you get back with family, how much less you spend, everyone's going to want to work remotely. And if you could work remotely, you could work anywhere. So at that stage, my partner and I, we spoke together and we decided we were going to try to figure out how to move out of our current home, rent it out within 8 weeks, and move to a market that was potentially on the rise, like the next Austin, perhaps. So at that stage, the research level became a lot more grand because instead of looking at 50-mile radius close to New York City, it became the entire United States. So the way I was able to filter that down was first looking at landlord-friendly states, which are mostly the smile states, so those that
Okay.
are in the southern region. And also by doing that, by moving with my salary, I'd be able to get 10% bonus just like that, which would be awesome without the property or without the taxes. So that kind of narrowed us down to a few areas, mostly Texas and Florida.
Yeah.
And I was looking for cities with high population growth. And that kind of narrowed me down to Tampa and Austin. And ultimately decided on Tampa in a neighborhood called Riverview, where it was only 20 minutes from Tampa. So I like these suburb areas that are close to the cities because you usually can get a really good tenant pool with families as well. It also had proximity to a military base as well as a brand new hospital being built. And how I was able to aggregate that employment data was kind of overlaying Google Maps, but also going back into Google News and trying to see what was coming. Again, time being on my side, investing in my 20s, I can wait 5 years for some of these new developments to happen, but know that after that, I can see a lot of growth from my investments.
So are you only investing in Florida now?
And also, I have a condo in Playa del Carmen.
Okay. Wow. And what about the property in New Jersey?
It's still rented out today.
It's
I
still
do
rented out?
self-managing from long distance.
Oh, that's incredible. And then is you're only doing rental properties, just cash flow properties, is that's been your goal since the beginning, correct?
Yes, that's been my goal since the beginning, but it's kind of changed a little bit in terms of my strategy. I was doing long-term only. Now I have a short-term rental as well.
Like Airbnb?
An Airbnb, yeah, in Tampa,
Got it.
Florida.
Okay. And then is that what you're doing right now? Or like just focused on doing rental properties, whether it's short term or long term?
Yeah, from what I've seen, short term has had pretty great gains, as well as medium term rental, which I want to get into that space just from folks that I've spoken to and data that I've researched. That's probably my next avenue.
What would be a medium term rental? Can you give me an example?
Sure. So traditionally, say if I had a 4-bed, 2-bath house, that would be renting out maybe that entire house to a family of maybe five, for example. Now, the thing there is that you're usually capped at a certain amount of rent, whereas for a medium-term rental, there are folks who maybe are nurses or travelers, and they need to live somewhere between 1 month to 6 months
Okay.
because there's less of that inventory available. The prices tend to be a bit higher, and you might have more turnover, but you're going to have more cash flow because you're now renting, say, by the bedroom, especially aside just from the entirety of the house to one single tenant.
I'm curious how much additional rent you would get as a percentage, like if all bedrooms are rented out.
It depends on location, but around so let's use an example for, say, Riverview, that
Okay.
town in Florida. It's by Tampa. 3-bed, 2-bath house is around $2,500. But now if you rent out each bedroom as 1,200, then that takes your
About
total rent.
50% higher. Yeah.
Yeah.
that- That's incredible. Based on your background, do you see like Florida? I know a lot of investors using REsimpli are like very bullish on Florida market. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you see, given where we are with, high interest rate and like end of May 2024? Like, where do you see the market going from here?
Yeah, I see Florida continuing to increase as a whole. There's a ton of people moving down, and the interesting aspect there, there's two things. So one is that it's not a new trend. People from the Northeast, especially, it's kind of like a known thing. Like you go to retire, you go to Florida.
Right.
So at some point in your life, you're going to end up there. But now it's just happening a lot earlier. And especially with families staying put together more rather than like someone who's in their 20s, like leaving and living on their own, they're kind of staying with their parents. At least even from what I've seen, like visually with friends and family, people are coming all together. So now the parents are like, okay, my house is worth $1 million in Long Island. I'm coming down. Son who's 29 is coming down as well. So I still see that continuing. And then from migration trends, you could actually look at this for free on Redfin. You could type in any city and say city market stats. And from Redfin, you could see that most people who have like left, say, Tampa, Florida, have stayed within the local area. So these are people that have sold their houses for a profit, and maybe they're staying within an hour to an hour and a half radius,
Interesting.
but still staying within the state.
And then all the research that you're doing it using like resources that are available to public for free, it sounds like.
Yes, that's the best part is that most of this data is all free. The US Census, the government, they post information on population, household income, as well as other economic stats to really help you get a feel for an area.
Right.
But then also these providers like Zillow, Redfin, Realtor, they post monthly free data of how the market is moving from national all the way down to the zip code.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's amazing all the information you can dig up on a neighborhood just by going to Google or all these other platforms that you have. I mean, are you still working full time for the company, or are you just doing real estate now?
Yeah, as of January of 2024, I left W2 World after about 10 years and working full time in my own startup called Coffee Closers.
All right, congratulations on that. How did that feel?
Thank you. It was a little bit nerve-wracking initially when I started everything in motion, but it's been amazing ever since. The analogy that I use is that as a data scientist, I felt previously in the work environment that I was almost like a painter in a room, being told where to paint, what brush to use, without as much creativity. But now in the entrepreneurship space, it's like I could paint anything that I'd like. So
Yeah,
it's really exciting to now have this new avenue of like real estate problems that I'm looking to solve using data.
perfect. Yes, tell me about your startup. I'm very curious.
Yeah, so the startup Coffee Closers, we help real estate investors find cash flowing deals within minutes. And the way it actually started was back 4 years ago when I started my YouTube channel. Number one thing I heard from other folks who also were working full time was, oh my God, this process of analyzing a deal is so manual. Going to say like Zillow, setting up a buy box, copying down information manually into a spreadsheet, cross-checking that with economic data when you're Googling. And ultimately, by the time you analyze a single deal, it could take minutes, hours, and that deal could be gone, especially in a fast-moving market.
Right.
So what I've done over the last 4 years is build these like mini tools to help investors get an edge, like uploading your spreadsheet, automatically calculating cash flow, tools to analyze a market using free data. But the number one question that I kept getting was, how do I just see this all in one? Right? Instead of having a series of tools, a series of different steps, how do I have one tool that helps me really analyze a deal and take me from, say, 10,000 properties in Dallas down to, say, five based on my strategy? So, what our product does is that it aims to congregate all this data, use AI as well as machine learning to help deliver insights and ultimately help you find the best deal based on your strategy.
That's amazing. So let's say if I'm an investor, by the way, I love that. Like that's what REsimpli is built on, just taking all these different tools that you play around with and just like one place to do everything. So I absolutely love that. So walk me through an example. Let's say if I'm an investor, I live in San Diego, right? this market isn't cash flowing, and I invest in Indiana right now, but let's say I want to look at property market in Florida. Okay, how would I go about that? Like, how would your tool help me in like analyzing? Is it helping me analyze just a property or also a market?
Yeah, it helps with both aspects. So starting with the market, right? So now you're looking at, say, Florida. We have data across the whole state, but you'd likely focus on specific cities at first. So say
Right.
Tampa, Orlando, Ocala, and Miami, perhaps. Now, when you dive into these cities, you'll see a similar view like a Zillow, where you have properties and you have some sort of map of where they're sitting. But what we do is actually append all of the metrics that would be relevant to an investor. So if you're looking for, say, a fixer-upper property, we use AI to automatically scan descriptions and images so that we could tell if a property needs some fixing up or some tender loving care. And then from there, you would see where that property lies within the map and what its ARV or return on investment potential would be.
So
Now,
this would be for the
yeah,
properties that are listed on the market, right? So you would just scan the images for properties that are listed on like Zillow and Redfin. Is that correct?
yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And then you would look at what is the asking price on the property versus potential market value.
Yes, so we look at those as well. So potential market value after it would be repaired so that you can calculate what your ARV spread would be like, ultimately a return on investment. So in that aspect, it's helping you being able to analyze the deals, all of
Okay.
them for the entire city, all of Miami at once. But on the other side is actually diving into the maps because we had the same question come from different investors where, okay, I know I want to invest in Miami. It's landlord friendly. Properties are within my price range, but how do I know where to actually invest? There's so many
Within
streets,
within
so many
Miami?
blocks.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we have a map that basically grades different neighborhoods from A to D using a combination of economic and market data stats. So looking like at median household income, employment rates, and then also on the other end, looking to see how prices or how homes have been selling over the last 6 months to really gauge, is this an area that is more so A, like luxury, or maybe C, where it's not luxury, has maybe more affordable homes. It could be a potential up and coming area.
Oh, that's amazing. I remember when I first started investing, people used to talk about these neighborhoods A, B, C, D, but it was all very subjective. It's
Yeah,
like what might be an A neighborhood for me. You might say, hey, this is a B neighborhood because of these reasons. So you've taken pretty much all of that out and you just type in an address. It tells you whether it's an A, B, C, or D neighborhood based on actual stats. I love that.
exactly. Based on
Yeah.
actual statistics and data, which of course, like for any tool that is used, data can get you 80 to 90% of the way.
Right.
You always want to have boots on the ground to make your
Yeah.
final decision and due diligence. But yeah, our neighborhood maps are able to help you at least take a whole entire city and just help you narrow down to just a few streets and a few neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets you in the right direction, right? You still
Right.
need to like do some more taking on the final decision, but at least it, helps you with like 80, 90% of it. Okay, just focus on this and then ask other questions on it. And so your platform, Coffee Closer, is that nationwide?
Yes, it has
Like all
nationwide
50
support.
states?
Yep.
Okay. And then for someone to start, they just go like type in an address, or is everything behind, they have to be a paid subscriber and then they get access.
Yeah, it's a 7-day free trial to our top 50 markets to really help you get a feel of the product itself, which vary across different states. And then once you go through that 7 days, you can select any single territory across the United States to dive in deeper. But what we
Okay.
are doing as well is we're doing a revamp of our property search so
Okay.
that you could just start on the product right away and just plug in any address and get a full report, which would include return on investment metrics, economic data, as well as seller information. And that will be readily available sometime mid-May of 2024.
Amazing. Who would you say your ideal like customer is for this product? Like who would get the most value from this?
Yeah, the most value would be someone who is someone like who has limited time. So, for example, myself, when I was kind of going through my first journey, data scientist, software engineer, doctor, we've seen as well be folks that just have limited time, but the capital they want to be able to use and be able to get a higher return on investment. So because of this, they need to use tooling that can help them get that edge to analyze deals more quickly and be able to close on them faster. So
Yeah,
those would be our ideal target users, as well as long distance real estate investors that also don't have the time to analyze a bunch of markets on their
yeah.
own.
No, I think it's great. I mean, I honestly can see myself using the product, or more active investors, they might be in one market. Now they're looking to go nationwide. I think it could be great for them to kind of just, narrow down which markets they want to go in, or which neighborhoods, which specific cities they want to go in. So I can totally see value in that also. And then let's say if I enter a property address, does your product also analyze numbers for me? Because I may have a property that I'm looking at. It could be possibly a great rental property, or it could also be a great flip. So is it helping me analyze? I just enter a property address. It tells me, okay, if you were to rent it out, this would be your like ROI, or cash flow on this. But if you were to flip, this is potentially how much money you could make.
Yes, exactly that. So our calculator is dynamic, where we have traditional, house hack, fix and flip, as well as BRRRR. So you land on a property and we'll give you a recommended strategy based on running the numbers, but then you can quickly toggle. So say you go from traditional to house hack, we now load in renting by the bedroom, assuming that
Oh,
maybe
wow.
you're just getting started, you're going to live in one bed, rent out the other bedrooms, be able to, get as much cash flow as possible. And then you'll see how much of your expenses would be covered. So we also kind of change our ROI metrics based on strategy, where it could be cash flow, expenses covered, what your ARV spread would be, really depending on what strategy you select.
I think that's incredible. Yeah, that's amazing. Like how things fall into place for you, coming from a data scientist background, and then just looking at it from a whole different perspective. Generally, real estate investors tend to be like very entrepreneurial, and let's just like go in, we'll figure out this thing later. But you're
Yeah.
like, okay, let's just take a step back. Let's make it a very process-driven approach towards it. I absolutely love that. Yeah. Ariel, this has been amazing. I'm definitely going to check out your product. What's the best way for someone to get more information on that?
Yeah, going straight to coffeeclosers.com, coffee and then closers, COLZERS.
Okay,
And you'd be
perfect.
able to start a 7-day free trial as well as book a demo. And if you'd like to reach out to me directly, I can be reached out to by Ariel.Herrera at coffeeclosers.com.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes also. Cool. Ariel, I want to ask you a couple of other questions. Besides creating this amazing product, what do you do for fun?
Oh, I'm a big beach bum.
Oh, yeah?
Another reason why I moved to Florida. Love being
Nice.
able to just go to the beach, listen to the waves. It helps to really think about some problems that I'm trying to solve, especially with like programming. I had a previous coworker several years ago. He was like, I go out for runs for 5 miles every day, and I just think about like a coding problem while I do it.
Yeah.
I was like, what? That's wild,
Yeah.
really?
I do that
Um,
on walks. Yeah.
you do? Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really refreshing to kind of take your step back away from the computer and think about things in a different way. So that's what I
Yeah.
like to do for fun.
I forgot to ask, do you do the programming yourself, or you have programmers?
No, do the programming myself. So it's me and two other co-founders, and we're all technical.
I love that. I love that. All right. What's the one book that's had the biggest impact in your life? It could be a personal book, it could be a professional, or it could be one of each.
I would say the book, or one of the books that have transformed my life has been 10X, my Grant Cardone.
Okay.
And reason being is that I used to set my goals based on what I thought I could obtain, which I never realized could really set yourself back. So initially, when I got into real estate investing or wanted to become one, I thought if I could just have one deal in the next 10 years, I could be ahead than most folks my
Yeah.
age. However, Grant Cardone says you need to 10x whatever your goal is. So I made my goal 10 properties that I wanted to get instead of in 10 years, in 5 years. So by the age of 30, I got to six at that time
That's
frame, but more than probably if I ever would have
yeah,
uh, set
that's
the goal to one.
absolutely. No, congratulations on that. Another good
Yeah.
book along those lines, like 10x is easier than 2x. Dan Sullivan. That's a great book too. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Um,
I'll
all
check it
right.
out.
Last question. If you could spend a day with anyone, dead or alive, who would you want to spend the day with and why?
Dead or alive, I'd want to spend time, probably want to spend time with some sort of like ancestor that I've had and understand like how they were able to overcome so much without like technology, like
Absolutely.
and how they were probably able to also enjoy life in a more simpler way than we do today.
Yeah.
So
Not
I think
always
that would
be
be,
so hooked to the phone, right?
yes, exactly. I think that would be an exciting conversation.
All right. Thank you so much, Ariel. Ariel, if someone wants to connect with you, I know you already shared your email address. Is that the best way for someone to connect with you or like social media or any other platforms?
Yeah, LinkedIn is also great. I'm frequently on there. Ariel Herrera, if you search Tampa, Florida, I should be the first to come up.
Perfect. All right. We'll make sure we'll put links to those in our show notes. Thank you so much, Ariel. This has been absolutely incredible. Thank you.
Same here. Thanks, Sharad.